Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us today for WEG's new series, Success on Her Terms. Today's topic is finding your true north, how to align purpose, people, and profit as you build and scale. My name is Alex Didac, and I'm with Merrill Private Wealth here in Chicago, joined by my two partners, Patrick Baldwin and Michael Marcovici, and Laurel Delaney, the president of WEG. We all wanted to welcome you and thank you for joining. 22 years ago, I came to the US from Transylvania, Romania, with 2 suitcases full of dreams and an unwavering love for entrepreneurship. I'm very passionate about helping successful women entrepreneurs, and I love the fact that this series celebrates women who've built success on their own terms. And now I'm going to turn it over to Laurel to say a word or two about this new series and our partnership. Laurel?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And good morning, everyone. Again, I am Laurel Delaney, founder and president of Women Entrepreneurs Grow Global. And we are a nonprofit organization that educates women entrepreneurs and business owners on growth expansion. So I am super excited about today's new program, Success on Her Terms. Just so everyone knows, this is the first installment of a dynamic 4-part series presented by WEG in collaboration with Merrill's Baldwin Marcovici Group. And it is designed to spotlight high potential growth stage women entrepreneurs, similar to our special guests that you're going to hear from shortly, who share their personal journeys and offer actionable insights to women on how to align purpose, people, and profit while building and scaling a business. Let's just say we are a match in heaven because both our respective organizations aim to empower and help women succeed. So without further ado, I always say on with the show. And Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick this off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laurel. And I'm so excited to partner on this exciting new series with you. Just wanted, before we bring on our special guest, just wanted to let everyone know that this conversation is being recorded and will be distributed via email after the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature of the Zoom platform to type in your questions, and we'll make sure to get to all of them after the webinar. But today, I'm thrilled to welcome Shelly Sun Berkowitz, CEO and founder of Founder to Founder. Shelly is a trailblazing entrepreneur who built her business from the ground up into a $750 million company over 2 decades. Shelly, bring yourself on. We're all excited to meet you.
Thanks, Alex.
So great to see you. Shelly, I know Bright Star began with such a personal inspiration. Can you take us back to that moment, caring for your grandmother, and how that sparked your vision to redefine in-home care?
Thank you. Sure. I mean, I think a lot of great entrepreneurs find something that they're looking for and they can't find it, and they turn it into a business model. And so in late 2001, I was looking for care for our grandmother. She needed non-medical care, but also she needed medical care. She was stage 3 cancer by the time we started a home care journey. And there was not one company that provided that full spectrum of care, that full continuum of non-medical and medical. And so I was coordinating 2 different companies. You know, sometimes they would show up, sometimes they wouldn't show up. They weren't communicating and were unwilling to communicate with each other. And, you know, sadly, unfortunately, we lost Grandma Pat in March of 2002. And I spent the next few months, I was in corporate America. I, came up through accounting. I have an undergraduate and a graduate degree in accounting, and never imagined being an entrepreneur. But I saw this huge need from a personal perspective. And so I just sought out to ask a bunch of people in healthcare that worked at hospitals, other families that had parents or grandparents if this was just an anomaly for our family or if this was a more widespread need. And what I heard was that we had a huge unmet need with other families had the same kind of needs that we did, and healthcare providers not having one place to be able to refer families to. And so in October of 2002, I founded Bright Star Care to offer the full continuum of care, medical and non-medical care, and went from one location to 2 locations to 3 locations in the Chicagoland area. And our business was profitable. And I had an opportunity with my mother-in-law at the time to invest in a hotel. And that was a Choice Hotels, a franchise brand. And I sat at new owner training with my mother-in-law and thought, my goodness, I think I could franchise Bright Star. I think there's other business-oriented people that have this great combination of head and heart that I think is critical in growing a business, particularly one that is as personal and touching a family's lives like ours does. It requires that head and heart. And so I set out to franchise our business model, which was really my way that we scaled Bright Star, the way that we did. I opened our first franchise location in 2006. And in February of this year, when I sold my business, it had grown to 425 plus locations in 43 states, serving about 25,000 families per week, employing a little over 27,000 care professionals and office personnel per week, and generating $750 million in annual revenue. So really large scale. I think franchising was certainly a lot of the way that we grew, but I come back to we were rooted in trying to solve something for families that we had experienced ourselves. And my true north was focusing on the high quality care that families deserve. And so we've always been nurse led. We require an RN in every single location. As we grew and scaled, I didn't know how I was going to enforce all of the high quality in every single location. So we made it a requirement of our franchisees to be Joint Commission accredited, which is what most hospitals and nursing homes go through. We are the only large scale non-Medicare home care company that is Joint Commission accredited, and all of our franchisees must get and maintain Joint Commission accreditation, which says that they're doing the right things clinically from a quality perspective, both in the way that they hire and oversee their caregivers and their nurses, but also in the care that's delivered in the home to families. And that was really important to me. And I think that willingness to not just scale for scale's sake and just grow at any cost, but to stay focused on what do we do for our clients, what do we do for our workforce on the front line, our caregivers. If we do the right things in that way, we will be profitable, we will scale. And so it was always a quality first, remembering the families we had a responsibility to. I think of the franchising was certainly one of the biggest reasons or biggest ways that we scaled. And I'm a big believer in franchising, but I think there was also key investments that we made along the way, trying to make this actionable for our audience. The biggest investments I think that we made along the way was certainly in team, making sure that we're, bringing in people to the organization that had been where we wanted to go. So I was typically looking, say, what size are we going to be? How many locations are we going to be in? How many states are we going to be in? 2, maybe 3 years out, and trying to find someone that had that experience set so they could help us get there. And instead of hiring someone, which I think, we've all been guilty of, hiring someone that fits the job now. But if you're growing, and we had 20 years of same store sales growth, annual growth of 15% or so per year for 20 years, if we didn't have people who could continually grow, then we were going to leave them behind. And we've rebuilt our management team, quite a few times. but it became easier to scale if we weren't having to do that every year. And so like looking out ahead and being willing to maybe pay 20% more to get someone that has more experience than we need today, but they have the experience we will need 2 to 3 years from now. So I think that was a really important part. We've invested very heavily in technology. All of our locations across the country are on the same platform. I'm an accountant by background, so data is really important. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And so making sure that all of our franchisees and our corporate locations have dashboards on how they're performing compared to the benchmark for multitude of different metrics, which are financial and revenue, but they're also clinical and client experience and net promoter score and our caregiver retention. There's a lot of things that go into making sure the business is holistically healthy. And so data has been a big part of that success profile. And then thinking about where our business could come from, not just one family at a time, but thinking about who pays for or arranges for care in the home. And that could be infusion companies where we're actually doing the administration in the home. It could be clinical trials where they need that to occur in the home. It could be workers' comp. That care typically is delivered in the home. And thinking through that on the success for our franchisees, if we could go curate business for our franchisees and bring it to them for them to fulfill, we could help them scale that much faster at the local level. And that investment in a national accounts program, it took 3 or 4 years before it had payback for itself. But I don't know that we would have gotten through COVID without our national accounts team, because we had a lot of pivoting that we had to do and staying nimble. And so I think those are some of the things that we've done along the way to always be thinking about how are we going to continue to grow and double every few years. It was intentional willingness to reinvest back into the business.
Wow. Such an incredible story, very inspiring. It just sounds like but you started Bright Star from such a deeply personal experiences, and the values and purpose at the beginning guided your journey throughout, like since day one, basically. So wow.
It really did, because I felt like early on, I either could have brought in venture capital or private equity really early, but it might have changed the investments I could have made and the quality I might have focused on, versus franchising allowed me to find other people that shared my core values to make a huge difference in the local marketplace. And provide great care for families. And so franchising as my vehicle to growth versus just taking money, I think was really aligned with that true north and my purpose to make a difference for families like we'd been looking for.
Wonderful. Thank you. You've also shared with me that raising your twin boys and especially navigating autism reshaped your priorities. How did that journey influence the way you built your business and the decisions you made as a founder?
Yeah, thank you. My boys were born the same week that I filed my legal entity for franchising. So I kind of was in major growth mode at the same time that I was, raising my boys. I became a single mom when they were about 10. And was a single mom until just last year I got remarried. And so it was very much having to have a very open and honest conversation about what mommy did and why mommy was needing to work this much, and try to be there and present as much as I could. Fortunately, my boys knew a lot about what I did, and I think it's something for the other women kind of watching this, is the more we can show our kids what we do and the impact it can have, the more understanding and the more we open up a dialogue for them to try to understand more about what drives us, the passion, and becomes a role model for them. I took my boys to visit with a quadriplegic that I took care of. Tim wouldn't move from Illinois to Tennessee if I didn't go with him and set up his care. And so I got that all set up, and a couple of years, into having Tim in Tennessee, he invited me to visit and to bring the boys. And particularly my autistic son, Luke, has one of the biggest hearts I've ever known. And Luke sat down, didn't even hesitate, sat down on the bed where Tim is bedridden, right? And sat down beside him. And Tim says, "Do you realize what your mom does?" And Luke says, "Kind of, it's healthcare, but I don't know that much more." He goes, "Well, let me tell you, all the doctors told me that I shouldn't be alive right now. I should have probably died 5 to 10 years ago, but your mom's been taking care of me all of that time. And if it wasn't for your mom, I wouldn't have seen my girls get to an age where they can have children, and I wouldn't have gotten to see my multiple grandchildren be born and start to grow up. And that's what your mom does." And fast forward, that would become very important that my children remembered the Tims of the world, that that's what my driving purpose was. It's what my true north was, because COVID happened in 2020, 2021. If someone had asked me in 2019, like, how long I would own my business and how long I would stay, active operational CEO, I would have said I probably would have died at my desk in my 90s and run this business and owned it for decades. And then COVID happened. And to say that it was 20 to 22 hours a day is not an understatement, 7 days a week, months on end, because if I didn't put in more, my franchisees' businesses might fail and our country's grandparents might die. And that was just a reality. And it meant that I couldn't be the kind of mom I wanted to be. And so watching my children having to do virtual school because Illinois closed down. And so, a year and a half or so of virtual school is not good for any child, but for an autistic child in particular that needs structure and socialization, that was really, really tough. Luke, no doubt, lost 5 years of growth in that year and a half. And while they tried to understand and I tried to communicate that they, in some ways, had to be a slight second to the business, I promised myself I would never do that again. And so, coming out of COVID, I wish I would have realized how burned out I was and probably the changes I needed to make. But soon as Luke got ready to try to go to college in August of 2023, it was very clear that if he was going to have the chance to be truly independent and have a fulfilled life, that the transition on his own and learning those life skills was going to take way more of my time than I could provide if I was still an operational day-to-day CEO in my business. And so I looked around my C-suite and I asked my COO to step up to CEO, and I stepped away for 6 months or so full time with my son in the city where he lives to help him make that transition. And it was a very rocky 6 months. We're 2 years later and he's doing great. So it was the right decision. But once I knew that I had stepped away from the business, it was unfair to come back in and be in the back seat to my CEO. But I couldn't be in the back seat or even watching from the peripheral view if I didn't take some chips off the table. I owned 100% of Bright Star at that point. We hadn't taken any chips off the table at that point. And so I decided after Luke was stable in kind of early 2024 to hire investment bankers and run a formal sales process. I did that through most of 2024. I had a full-time CEO kind of handling the business day to day, and I was full-time involved in the sales process. And so at the end of 2024, I had an offer to sell, and I was 2 weeks away from closing. And I had the private equity buyer not treat me well, insisted I get on a phone call on Thanksgiving Day and try to retrade the price. And I said, "I can't talk to you today. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And when I got on the phone, I realized they were trying to retrade the price, even though our Q of E, quality of earnings, and all of our third-party work had come back completely spot on. And this was a test. They thought that I was a pressured seller and that I wouldn't keep my business that I loved. And I wasn't going to sell to someone. They were going to treat me that way before I sold. They were not going to run the business in the way that honored my legacy and putting our clients, our caregivers, and our franchisees first. People first, money second. You do the right thing for people, the money follows. And that what everything was about dollars and cents. The questions weren't about people, they weren't about quality. And so I stepped away from the deal. And I went to my backup bidders and I contacted all three. All three said, "Oh my goodness, we're so grateful that you didn't sell to someone else. We're great. It's awesome. We have a chance to still own Brightstar." But one of them, who was the managing partner at Peak Rock Capital, Spencer Moore, said, "Shell, if I get on a plane, will you sit down with me tomorrow so we can hammer out the details, align on strategy, align on the team, and see if we can pencil out something?" And I said, "I will." I said, "But I got to be honest, I only have 2 months left in me because this has been a very emotional, grueling process. And if we don't think we can close a deal in 2 months, I'd rather not start it. I'm fine going back to running my business and revisiting this in a couple of years." He goes, "You have my word. If we can hammer out things tomorrow and we sign an exclusivity, we will be closed in under 2 months." And we signed exclusivity January 5th. We closed the sale on February 28th. And it is allowing me to have the flexibility as a mom while still honoring the legacy of what Brightstar stands for. I'm a significant shareholder. I rolled over a lot of equity. I'm executive chairwoman of the board. So it's a next chapter, a next phase, but it's allowed me to prioritize my new marriage and my children while still staying intellectually and emotionally engaged in things that I really care about.
Wow, it's so incredibly powerful to hear how your personal journey as a mother shaped not only your business decisions, but also the broader purpose behind Brightstar. So thank you so much for sharing this with so much honesty, and I'm excited that Luke is doing better and you're able to kind of reprioritize things. So thank you so much. So I know we talked about Brightstar, we talked about family, autism. Why don't we switch gears and perhaps go to another true north, and that's talking about women supporting women, because I know you're very passionate about this and you've been a powerful advocate for women entrepreneurs. What experience led you to create Founder to Founder? And how do you see mentorship and visibility changing the game for women who are trying to scale their businesses?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think if I went back and we talked about Brightstar, right? I had a personal experience. I saw a gap and I built a business model to solve it. Founder to Founder was the same thing, really, for me. I went through a sales process. I hired investment bankers. I met lots of private equity firms. I engaged with my own team. I hired an outside consultant. Most all of them men. Most all of them focused on transactional, not emotional. Never walked in the shoes of a founder. Never had the sacrifices of a founder. And more often than not, discredited me just because of my gender. And would navigate and ask the men in the room to speak, even though I knew the business better than anyone else. And that really, once I kind of closed the chapter of selling Brightstar and took a couple of months, I said, you know what? I want to help other founders. And I'll come to like all founders and then female founders. I want to help all founders because everyone that you can hire has a vested interest that you sell a majority interest in your company. And for some founders, that's not the right thing to do, or it's not the right time to do it. And so I want to be agnostic. I want to be the founder consigliere, but let's talk through why you're doing it. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want your day-to-day to look like? And so Founder to Founder was a way to advise founders on how do you scale and how do you monetize. And that could be a debt recap, that could be a minority transaction, that could be a majority transaction, that could be long-term hold family office, That could be private equity, where you're going to have two bites at the apple if you have a rollover. And I wanted to help other founders have someone who was going to recognize as a founder that a decision to sell your business, sell your baby, is 75% emotional and only 25% transactional. I walked away 2 weeks from a deal closing, knowing what the amount of money was going to be hitting my bank account. It didn't matter. It was my legacy. I spent 2 decades working and putting the business oftentimes first in my life. There was no way I was going to do that and not do it to a good person. So price is important, but it's the third or fourth thing to consider. But everybody wants to talk to you as though it's the first thing, because everyone that's talking to you isn't a founder. So founder to founder for me was an opportunity to advise other founders in a kind of a consulting way. And then recognizing, this is a scary statistic, that only 1.9% of female-owned businesses will ever get beyond $1 million of revenue. I wanted to have a lot of founder-to-founder resources available for women, free. And so our founder-to-founder site has a very robust resources section. The book that I wrote on scaling through franchising, Grow Smart, Risk Less, the entire manuscript is available with AI search built in so that anyone can use it. And then we've built a founder-to-founder female founder group on LinkedIn to have the community support each other. And so that personal experience led to seeing that women have a hard time scaling because oftentimes they can't reach capital to grow and will likely be marginalized in going through a sales process. And I want to be an advocate beside them. My finance background means I know how to get through a quality of earnings. I know how to go through the data room. I can do all the things that are very financial, but I also can be there to help make sure the founder, male or female, but certainly female, is ready for management meetings and isn't discredited or underestimated and gets the terms that the founder needs. And I think that's really important. And it's kind of my next chapter of having impact, of being able to kind of pay it forward to help other founders get the return on all the sacrifices they've made in a way that honors their legacy.
Wow. It's amazing how you've turned your own experiences into a platform for lifting others, right? Founder to founder is a true powerful, very powerful example of what happens when women champion other women. So it's incredible. Thank you for that. So maybe we can shift gears next to talk a little bit about the impact you're having beyond the business. Your impact clearly expands beyond BrightStar, and from philanthropy to investing to the board work you do. How do you decide where to focus your energy, and what kind of ripple effect are you hoping to create?
Yeah, I think I knew that with having a successful transaction and selling a majority stake in BrightStar, I would have opportunities to invest. I would have opportunities to help support some philanthropic passions of mine. And so I'm trying to do both. My experience setting up founder to founder has actually kind of come at a really interesting intersection of what I'm trying to do with women founders in particular in raising capital. As I set up my family office as Next Phase Capital. And so it was really interesting that some of the founders who I want to help one-on-one, they won't be the right client for founder to founder because they haven't scaled enough yet. And I can't do it for free, but I also don't want to charge them. But they might be at a stage where it's not right for them to take institutional capital, but private capital that can help them get to another milestone before they monetize. I mean, a business that's maybe only $1 million of EBITDA earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization, $1 million of EBITDA, if a $2 million investment in people, technology, marketing, et cetera, is going to help them get to 2.5, 3 million a couple of years from now, and they sell for a 10x multiple. I mean, that's a 3-time result by a little bit of capital helping them get there. And I would argue the macro environment will likely be better a few years from now than it is today. And so I'm finding that Founder to Founder is a platform where I'm getting a lot of introductions, but having both Founder to Founder, depending on the size of the founder-owned business, Founder to Founder advisory services might be the right fit, but for some, it might be the right fit to bring in friendly, roll up your sleeves type capital that can help them get to the next stage before they look at a monetization event. And so that is one area that I'm taking direct investments in companies, anywhere from a couple $100,000 to, $5 million, $7 million of an investment, depending on what the business is and what size it's grown to, and helping them get to another stage through scaling, through my involvement. And that's been really fun. And over half of the 8 investments I've done since I sold my business are female founders, and that feels really great. And then philanthropically, I'm a big believer that franchising made a huge difference for me. I think franchising is a huge opportunity to address income inequality and grow wealth, particularly for franchisees. And so I endowed a franchise program at my alma mater, the University of Tennessee. And so we have a certificate program where it's there's a weekly program where it's moderated by an instructor. But in the spring, we will actually be able to launch out an asynchronous offering as well. So it's self-paced, all web-based for those that might not be able to hit a certain day of the week schedule for a navigated class. And so it's teaching, how to evaluate different franchise offerings, what a franchisor should do. And we've really tried to target impact by reaching out with intentionality to veterans, women, minorities, and others, emerging franchisors, potential franchisees, and I pay for 100% of what that tuition is. So people can attend that program and there's no cost to them. It's my way of trying to lift those attendees up and whatever their future journey might look like. And then we're bringing franchising to the undergraduate and graduate school programs as well. So more people exit college and realize that franchising is so much more than just McDonald's. There's over 3,000 franchise brands in the U.S. and most of us don't realize that. And so it touches every fabric of the economy. So, addressing income inequality and franchising education is a big passion of mine. Autism is a big passion of mine. Animal welfare is a big passion of mine. One of my biggest investments since I sold was in Good Boy vodka. And you think spirits, how is that like social impact? But I love that every pour helps a pup is the tagline. And they very intentionally, I love my dog. I mean, he's like my next child. And so animals and our veterans, and what they've done is have money going with intentionality to shelters to help save these dogs, but also train them and pair them with our veterans that are returning back that have a huge depression rate and a huge rate of suicide. But if you can pair them with a dog and they have something to love and something to love them back, it helps reduce, and it's proven to reduce, the incidences of suicide and address PTSD in our military. And God bless, they keep us all safe. And how great is it we can help save some amazing dogs and help our veterans at the same time. So it was a business because of the passion behind it, and the causality of the causes they were willing to support, that I got behind that from a private placement investment. And then others have been female founders as well.
Wow, such great causes. And it really is inspiring to see how intentional you are with your time and energy you spend, and your work beyond Bright Star creates a ripple effect that goes beyond the boardroom. So very, very inspiring. Thank you for that. As your journey has evolved, so has your true north. We've seen like at different phases in your entrepreneurial journey, you had your true north kind of shifted a bit. Obviously, you always, your values, you always go back to your like initial values and purpose and stay true to them. But what lessons stand out the most, and what advice would you give entrepreneurs trying to define or realign their own guiding principles?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think for me at this stage, it's about where can I have positive impact, creating jobs, um, helping entrepreneurs that have already taken risk grow and scale that risk, so that there's an ROI on their time and their sacrifice, choosing to work with people who are coachable and are going to make a difference in the world, with the people that they're interacting with. I'm very much a people first, results follow. And again, like if you're doing the right things by customers, employees, the results will show up in the income statement. And so I choose the companies where I invest, where I'm on the board of directors of several companies. I choose those founders and those companies based upon where we're trying to do good, creating more entrepreneurs through franchising, or where there's a social impact. And then I'd say for entrepreneurs, one of the best things that I did, and sometimes these things happen by accident, but I was traveling on planes to going to see my franchisees a ton during kind of the 2007, 2009. At the same time, I was kind of growing my management team quite substantially. And I felt like every single problem was walked to my office for me to solve. And it becomes impossible to find the bandwidth to scale and think about strategy and to go be the mom I wanted to be if I didn't find bandwidth. And so it's during a period of time where we're all on planes and you'd see the 311 in terms of the ounces and the bag and the things you could travel with. And the 311 didn't work for what I tried to do, but I did create within our business a 131. And I feel like this was a gift that I gave myself, but it was a gift that I gave all the leaders that worked for me, and eventually the people that worked for my leaders, is teaching them how to think and teaching them how to put a stake in the ground and feel empowered and take that empowerment. And so for one problem, they had to think through and offer up 3 possible solutions to that problem and give one recommendation that they were willing to stand behind and implement to solve that problem. And so instead of my leaders walking to my office and saying, I have this problem with XYZ franchisee, I would stop and say, okay, what's your 131? And they'd be like, oh, and they'd go back to their office and they'd have to think about it. They'd have to solve their own problem. And they'd come back down with a 131 and we would talk through it. And it's really hard for a founder, an entrepreneur, to turn over decision making because it's your baby. You ultimately have everything at risk and your employees are getting a paycheck. And so it's hard to turn over authority to make these decisions. But this became a real safe way for me to see how my leaders would think and how they would solve problems with me present. And once I got to where the recommendation was aligned to what I could accept, maybe not what I would have done, but what I could accept 90 to 95% of the time, I didn't need to look at the routine 131s. I just need to look at the ones where they weren't sure. And that took an investment in them, but that intentional investment in them helped them be better leaders and better thinkers and better strategists, but it also gave me back bandwidth. And so that would be my, hopefully helpful words of advice for entrepreneurs that have a hard time elevating themselves because it's difficult to delegate to others. And that was a tool that I created that allowed me to find bandwidth and delegate, but with boundaries, to make sure the business was staying true to my true north while others were making decisions so I didn't have to day in and day out.
Well, love the 131. I'm gonna maybe adopt the same thing on my end. If you look back at your journey, is there something that you wish you had known earlier?
I think two things. I think one, the lesson I try to give, wasn't one that I did really early on because I bootstrapped. That hiring those that already had the skills and experience set with where you wanted to go 2 to 3 years out would pay for itself by allowing you to get to that stage faster and have others that could do it without you having to tell them what to do. They already knew what to do. I think that was really, really helpful. I wish I'd known that from the beginning. Only once I was having to change out my management team every 18 months. And that's hard. I mean, I did it with empathy. I'm really proud that a couple of my, direct reports have gone on to run really successful businesses. And I helped, kind of help them through kind of getting onto that entrepreneurial journey because they just weren't exactly right for what the business needed at that stage of it internally, but they could be a great small business owner. And I saw that in them. So it was great to have them on a path, but I wish I could have seen that spending that extra 20% or so in salary would have had a great ROI. I wish I would have realized that sooner. I think it would have been less stressful in growing. And then I think it's really important to always be assessing if you're still in it because you love it, and if what you're doing day in, day out is still what you want to be doing 2, 3, 5 years from now. I think if I really had taken stock of that question, if I had had someone challenge me with that question, or if I was challenging myself in 2022 after going through COVID, I would have said I would have self-assessed that I didn't want to stay in an operational CEO role for another 5 years. And I may have been able to be more intentional about my CEO search and my own role day in, day out, and my own choice of a majority sale or a minority sale or private equity versus long-term hold family office. But I didn't assess it. And so by the time that I was in crisis with my son, I probably also was worn out from COVID, leaving it all in the field for 2 years, and didn't assess that. And so I think it's really important for entrepreneurs, founders to always be thinking about if what they're doing today is still bringing them enough joy to continue doing it 5 years from now, or can their role change with intentionality if they would prefer to do it part-time versus full-time.
Wow, your reflections are such a gift to the entrepreneurs listening in, and hearing how your true north has evolved over time offers both like wisdom and reassurance to those still defining their true north, because obviously that evolves over time. So thank you so much for that. And we do have some more time for a couple of questions if you're okay with that. But looking back, and I know we touched a little bit on this, what core values kept you grounded and how did you protect them under pressure?
Yeah, I'd say a couple really come to mind, and I think I've commented on it, but kind of this people first of like thinking about what the passion was that got you into the business you're in the first place. And so for me, with Bright Star Care, it was moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, and they stayed my true north of how am I going to deliver the highest quality, most consistent care to them day in and day out, and making every decision, every investment, every prioritization with that in mind, I think made hard decisions easier, particularly during COVID, right? There were choices that we had to make between caregivers and clients, and that was really hard. But if I thought about who's the most vulnerable and who am I there to protect the most, it's those that can't protect themselves that were dying from COVID. And so that kind of stayed my true north. So that people first. And now, when I think about what clients do I want to take on, what, free resources do I want to publish, is with intentionality of helping founders scale and be rewarded for the sacrifices they've made. And being thoughtful about that impact I want to have, I think is really important. And so I do tend to have this huge empathy. You know, I have a huge heart, but I think it's really important that founders, entrepreneurs balance head and heart. And you can only do that if you have a good system of accountability in place. And sometimes early on, your closest employees can be friends. And I think it makes it harder to change them out if they're holding the business back. And so one of the best programs that I ever kind of came across, and there's two different books, What the Heck is EOS? Was written second. So I didn't have the benefit of reading that first, but I would recommend it first. And then Traction, both of those books by Gino Wickman, it really helps put in a very regimented process for prioritizing the big things, holding your team accountable, focusing on what's the strategy, then the structure, then the people, because the first two need to be in place. And I think we have a tendency as entrepreneurs to try to take the people we have and move them around to the boxes to make it fit. And that's probably not the right way to grow and scale a business. And so for me, I'd say that those people first, and then balancing that people first with there can be heart, but there has to be head too, and accountability is the way to put that into place and make sure it's a sustainable business, and accountability through entrepreneur operating system that's in the book Traction was my key to being able to do that successfully.
Wow. Thank you for the recommendations. I can't wait to look into it and read them in the right order. I know COVID was a pivotal time, you know, in your personal life. How did stepping back for your son reshape your view on leadership and success?
I think for me as an entrepreneur and a mom, I think my definition of success is having impact from a quality of care perspective on the tens of thousands of families we have the honor to take care of in terms of Bright Star Care. But I can still do that and enable that without that having to be full time. And so I really am thoughtful about how I use my time with the brand. I'm helpful to our private equity firm. I'm engaged with the management team at board meetings and in between, as there are any areas I can be helpful with. I still attend, healthcare conferences to make sure we're thinking about how to continue to innovate and invest to stay relevant. But I think this is a saying I heard from a different mom, and but it's very true, is you're only as happy as your least happy child. And so for me, being able to know that I am creating a life where I have this flexibility to support all four of our children. I gave birth to two, I have four. To me is the biggest definition of success. As long as I'm intellectually engaged, and I can do that in part-time ways at this stage of my life after 20, 30 years of giving a lot into traditional employment. Now it's through advising, investing, and being the best wife and mom I can be. And for me, that is my personal definition of success.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love the saying. And then I know we touched a bit on this as well. Your impact goes way beyond Bright Start, but what kind of impact do you hope to leave through your investments and advocacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really keep a hard focus on an impact scorecard. And so the businesses that I'm investing in, it's less about, though I expect a return on investment, it's not a gift, but looking at how the business itself scaled, how many employees did it have, what did it grow to, how many franchisees did it have, how many did it grow to, the the endowment at the University of Tennessee. I'm meeting with them in the next week and a half to start measuring impact of how many attendees are we having through the programs, how many have created businesses. I know of 3 that have attended the program in the last 18 months that have started businesses. That will forever change their lives multi-generationally. And so being able to actually track that and know that we're having that kind of impact, it's not just about writing a check, it's about getting engaged and making sure that we're holding all of those involved accountable, that if we're going to provide resources, it should have impact. And that's a really important stage for me, is making sure that the intentionality is having impact for the founders, where I make an investment or I spend my time, and then I'm still, my heart is still in Bright Star. And so making sure that the quality metrics, the customer net promoter score, the employee net promoter score, stay on track in the future like they were when I handed over the baton to lead the organization day to day. And that still is and will remain important to me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And any final thoughts, words of wisdom, any advice for the people listening?
I just encouragement. I think it's easy to have people in your ecosystem that can talk about what might be hard. And I think it is a special person who is an entrepreneur that disregards that and pushes forward. So where possible, Laurel was that for me. She was my facilitator in Women Presidents Organization. I think find organizations like WPO and others where you can surround yourself with other like-minded individuals that are in this journey to grow something special, other women that are defining it on their terms, where you can share how are you finding a way to be a entrepreneur, be a mom, be a partner, and whatever relationship status, be a good friend, be a daughter. What are all those, roles that we wear? And let's lose the expectation that we have to handle it all on every single day. Let's just recognize, as women, we juggle a lot of balls. On any given day, a couple will be glass. Let's not drop those. But the rubber ones can bounce and we can pick them up, or we can surround ourselves with other friends and supporters that can help us pick those up and continue juggling.
Wow, incredible words of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story with us today. Your story is really a powerful example of what's possible with a vision, with grit, and with perseverance. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really enjoyed our conversation. Just a couple of takeaways from me personally. Shelly's journey shows how values and care can drive both growth and impact. And Founder to Founder proved that mentorship and visibility empower women and create a lasting change. We hope today leaves you motivated to keep building, dreaming, and growing. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly at alexandra.didac, DIDAC, @ml.com. And please join us on February 3rd for our next episode with Nancy Sharp, CEO and founder of Food for Thought, and she will be discussing deciding what matters most. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.